Hi, I'm Paris, and I don't know how many electrical storms we've had here in the past month. It's been a lot, and we have UPSs, which is what this is, an uninterruptible power supply throughout our house. I just noticed the lights flickering there. But I'd never had one in this room, and so when the thunderstorm would kick up at 4 in the morning, I would wake up from the thunder, run over here, and have to make sure I had unplugged the camera because it didn't have much protection. Just an inexpensive power strip. Now it's kind of a pain to go and buy a UPS because it's not like a $20 power strip that provides some protection against lightning strikes. This is a much more complicated device, and so to get a good one, you're looking at close to $100. And you're going to want to have one for your TV, for your computer. If you have some other expensive electronics, you're going to want to have those protected as well. It does add up, but it does not compare to the cost of having to replace those expensive electronic items, whether from damage from a nearby electrical strike or the ongoing insidious damage of brownouts in your house. I picked this CyberPower battery backup based both on how many electronics were going to be plugged into it, the price, and a feature that it has that I think is very important, and I'll tell you all about. This was actually $95 over at my local Fry's. They were having a special on it, so it was $15 off the usual price. Oh, let me turn this around so you can see the back of the package. They had a model there that I thought, wow, I really want that. It's a brand new model for gamers that produces a true sine wave output, so that if you have a more expensive gaming system that has a really high quality power supply in it that requires that special sine wave feature in an uninterruptible power supply. Again, $95. I'm having trouble holding this up. If you're interested in this, I'll put a link to it down below this video. Why is this so heavy? It just has a battery in it, right? Well, it has a lead acid battery, similar to what you have in your car, or if you have a motorcycle, it's almost the same size battery. That's so it can be discharged and recharged many times, and that's the least expensive battery technology to provide this much power, because it has to, in this case, it has a 530 watt capacity, which means you can plug devices into this that draw up to half a kilowatt of power, and it has to be able to provide that for a certain amount of time. Now that the box is empty, I can hold this up and show you the information about how long this will last. This looks pretty impressive. 4 hours, well, that's only if you have a DVR plugged into it and it's recording something. This has got 12 outlets. You're going to have other things plugged into it. More reasonable is the 30-something minutes if you have a desktop Mac computer plugged in, and probably for most people, if you fill up all of those 12 spots, 15 minutes if you have a flat screen TV and a PlayStation plugged into it. And it's easy to understand wanting to protect a computer or a TV from electrical spikes, but these are some other things you also might want to consider protecting. Here's what comes in the box. You have the device with a 3-4 foot power cord and very brief instructions and a USB cable, which might strike you as strange, but as I mentioned, this is an intelligent device, and it will attach to your computer via USB cable and talk to the computer, so that if you were to leave your computer on working on a project or something and the power went out where you are, normally you would lose whatever you had if that file was open and the computer just shut right off because power was gone. With this, again, it will run for a while, 30 minutes maybe with a Mac computer, but what if you're gone for an hour? What if the power's out all day? This can talk to your computer and say, hey, power's out, it doesn't look like it's coming back, and will actually tell the computer to save the files, close the programs, and shut itself down. Here are the 12 ports you have to plug things in. Over here, you'll notice they say surge only, which means they're protected from electrical surges on this side, but battery backup is not provided, and for a number of devices, it's not essential. You plug the computer in on the side over here where these all provide battery backup. You can plug the speakers to the computer over here. On the end of the device, here's that USB port to connect to your computer. Over here is a reset button. And then over here, you can see 3 what look like phone jack plugs, and that's what they are. They're provided protection from electrical surges and spikes as well. And you can use this to have your DSL modem, if you're still getting on the internet that way, protected by plugging the line into this first, and then maybe one that goes out to your DSL modem, one that goes out to your phone system. So it's not hard for people to understand. If there's a lightning strike, your computer's plugged in to the wall, it could get fried. When I worked as a computer technician, I had to assess damage and write up reports for people to file with their insurance because that exact thing happened. And so I regularly recommended UPS systems to my customers, but again, it's $100 and you may need 2 or 3 in the house. Or you can roll the dice and see if you don't end up with a $2,000 burned out TV or computer system. The first time, though, that I learned about and recommended UPS devices was when I worked at an accounting firm. I ran their computers, and the bookkeepers would go out to lunch and leave the computers on, sometimes with a file open, so they could come back after lunch and pick up right where they left off. The problem was if the power went off during lunch, a mess. They'd put the entire morning into working on that project, and they were not happy that now it was gone. So I would have to go and pull the file off of the backup we had from the day before, and they would have lost half a day's work. So I convinced the owner of that CPA firm, let's get these for the computers, and because it was easier than changing the behavior of the bookkeepers. Also here in Texas, I recommended UPSs to a number of my customers who, when I was in their house working on a computer problem, I would notice in the summer when the air conditioner came on, all the lights dim. Now that all ties into a feature of this particular little bit more expensive UPS that I think is very important, and it is advertised here as AVR. That's automatic voltage regulation. The older, more primitive versions of these had a certain voltage limit where if it dropped to this point or it got to this point, it would switch over completely to running off the battery. It would basically disconnect your devices from the power coming in from the wall. With automatic voltage regulation, it doesn't let it vary so much before it takes action, especially when the voltage dips, which is what you see when there's a brownout, which is when the air conditioner starts up and the lights go dim in the house and the voltage drops down to 115, 110 volts. What this will do, rather than switching over to the battery, it will use the battery to supplement the voltage to bring it back up to 120. So it much more finely tunes it, which takes the load off of your electronic devices. For example, with computers, the power supply in the computer that takes the power from the wall and converts it to DC to run the components of the computer is designed to handle a certain amount of spikes and brownouts. But over time, its capacity to deal with that wears out. And once that happens, the computer acts weird every time you have even a slight variation in power. What this does is it takes those hits for the device, and it keeps the power going to the device within a very narrow range, which makes the device much happier, last much longer. So with my going on and on about this, perhaps you can tell I feel very strongly about having these UPS devices for the sensitive electronics in your house. What I like with these newer model UPSs is that they give you a screen to let you know what's going on, what voltage is currently on the line and so forth. Before, you always just had to guess and hope they were doing what they were supposed to do. 119, 120. The load is how much you currently have plugged in, and we've got 120 volt coming in from the wall, charging this device up. I've plugged this LED lamp in. It draws about 40 watts when I turn it on. You might have seen there the voltage going 119 to 120. It could just be a regular flickering thing, or it may be over in the other room. One of my daughters was turning on a hairdryer. That'll temporarily drop the voltage in connecting circuits. Let's turn on the lamp. And I thought there'd be an indicator telling me there's more or less load, but maybe it's just saying there is load. Okay, in any case, I'm going to unplug this from the wall, and it should start beeping to let me know that the power is out as far as it knows, and the lamp should stay on because I've got it plugged into the surge and battery side. Unplugging now. Okay, it's giving me a countdown timer of how many minutes. There's the beeping. Countdown timer of how many minutes it can last, discharging at this rate with this amount of draw, which is one 40-watt lamp. So you can see I would have lighting for a few hours after the power went out at this rate. I'm going to plug it back in. Here we go. Plugged it back in the wall. Switch back over to running from the power company. Do you ever see the lights dim in your house when some appliance comes on? Do you ever have the power go out, come back on, go out, come back on? That happens several times while they're trying to repair a broken line or a downed power pole. That is really murder on your devices, because every time the power comes back up, before they have a chance to really regulate it, there's usually a power surge. We take for granted that the power that comes out of the wall socket is going to be clean power without spikes and is going to be at the right voltage. And the utility companies do an amazing job of 99.9% of the time making that the case. But it's that other tiny bit of time when all your expensive electronics are plugged in, you don't want to take the chances. $100 is not a bad deal to keep all those devices safe.